Hello and welcome to another Rugby League Down South podcast, then looking at the game of rugby league across the south of England. I should really get myself some music, shouldn't I, to jazz up the start of the podcast. We'll see if we can get that for next week. But quite a good episode for you on the way, hopefully, this week. We'll talk quite a lot about the Broncos. Their start of the season hasn't been great in the Super League, so we'll break down a bit of what some of the fans are saying about the start of the season. We'll also hear from Oxford, and in particular from BBC commentator Ray French about his memories of watching the game, watching sport at Iffley Road, where Oxford Rugby League are going to play, and also Ray's thoughts on the shoulder charge, as well as it being outlawed by the RFL. He compares the hoo-har that's happening now to the Cumberland Throw from when he was playing. So that story on the way later on. We'll hear from HEMEL as well. They had a pre-season friendly last weekend. They got another one this weekend, their final one against Oxford, in fact, before they start their Northern Rail Cup campaign before the Championship 1 season. Our club profile today comes from Guildford, so we'll hear about how Guildford are preparing for their new season in 2013. And we'll also hear from one of the London Broncos under-19s who trained with Melbourne Storm the other day, which was quite a few of them were a bit starstruck, but now everyday household names can be, they can say they've played against them. So we'll hear from one of the Broncos under-19s a little later in the programme. But first of all, the London Broncos. Another defeat. That's 3 from 3 to start the 2013 Super League season. This one against Wakefield, 28 points to nil at home as well. Not easy for the fans to take. Plenty messages came flooding into me on Twitter at the end of the game. Matt at Ian Ramsdale on Twitter at the end of the game said, 3 games in, we seem to be lacking intensity and desire. I thought Ray would have had them motivated at least. Disappointing, said Matt. Also Chris on Twitter saying, I don't usually do Sunday matches. Not sure I want to do Saturday ones if that's what London Broncos are going to do this season. And Michael saying at Ian Ramsdale, there hasn't been any prolonged positivity around the club since 2007. It's virtually dead now and everything has been tried. So pretty strong opinions emanating from the Stoop on Sunday evening. Like I said, a 28 points to nil defeat, and not just that as well. Only 1,800 people watching there too. The crowds do seem to be slowly slipping away. Hardly surprising though if you think about the success that the team have brought on the field quite recently. So something has to change, otherwise it could well be a downward, or the continuation of a downward spiral. So we'll start the podcast by getting the thoughts of one of the people who was at the game on Sunday, who was calling the shots for BBC London. Jamie Hill was there. He says it wasn't a great day.
No, it almost seemed like a perfect storm of everything that could go wrong, that would go wrong for London on Sunday. Sorry, I'm going to start that again. Sorry, mate.
No worries.
I was about to say 100 turned up. It was 1,000. Sorry, mate.
Was it 1,800? Right. Is that right? Or
1,800. Yeah. Sorry. I'll start again. Yes, Ian, it seemed almost like a perfect storm of everything that could go wrong eventually did go wrong for London on Sunday afternoon. 1,887 the crowd. There was a fair contingent from Wakefield, so you're probably looking at around about 1,500 maybe fans for the London Broncos on Sunday, and the performance was by some distance the worst that I've seen following the London Broncos
really?
In the 3 seasons that I've seen. Yes, there was a lack of passion from them. There was no go forward from dummy half. The last tackle option was not there. Craig Gower seemed to be always on the back foot, and you know just how well Craig Gower can put a team around the field of play. And apart from Kieran Dixon, it didn't really seem as though there was any option for London to actually get on the scoreboard. You really didn't suspect they were going to breach the Wakefield try line, and the tone was really set from the first 55 seconds when the right-hand side defence allowed Ben Cockayne through, and he went on to score the first of his 2 tries of the afternoon. Tellingly, the Super League stats now say that Ben Cockayne is the largest meter maker in the entire Super League after Sunday's performance against the London Broncos, and that says everything really about just how porous that defence was. And you could understand the pessimism from the London fans after that display. It wasn't just the fact that they lost to the Wakefield Trinity Wildcats. I think before the game, Wakefield were favourites. They came into the game off the back of a big win against Hull KR, and of course Hull KR had a big win themselves on Sunday afternoon, so we know that they're a decent side, and we know that they improved enormously last year under Richard Ingle, and one of the reasons I'm sure why he got the job of coaching France at the 2013 World Cup this year. But I think to actually get nilled by Wakefield was the thing that upset the London fans most of all, because unfortunately it always looked as though they weren't going to get themselves onto the scoreboard. They got themselves down into the red zone a couple of times. They never really looked like they were going to breach the try line, and on the one occasion when they would have actually scored a try, got called back by the referee Phil Bentham for a knock-on. And ironically, from that knock-on, Wakefield actually scored a try themselves, which pretty much closed the game out. So a very dispiriting afternoon. As I say, it was a performance I think everyone at the London Broncos would probably like to forget.
Absolutely. I had a couple of messages saying, that the referee didn't necessarily have the best of games, but I guess when you're being nilled in such a way, you can't really blame the referee for the entire game. Simon on email on rldownsouth@gmail.com said he wasn't there, but 4 tries in 3 games simply isn't good enough for the talent that's in the squad. And Graham on Twitter saying, at Ian Ramsdale, the lowest official crowd in years, he thinks, lowest in Super League. No heart and 2 defeats from 2 at home. Against the competition's 2 weaker teams. It doesn't bode well, does it? Because those are the games. Widnes and Wakefield. Okay, Widnes seem to be much improved this year, but you can't. They are, as one of our callers has said, they're your peers. They're the games that you really should be looking to win and wanting to win, and the others, a Wigan away, like this weekend, is seen as a bonus, and I think that's probably one of the most dispiriting parts of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at the pre-season, Ian, and it went so well for the London Broncos. They put the London Scholars to the sword in the pre-season match at the Honourable Artillery Company ground. 76 it was, I think, and that was a much more emphatic scoreline than it was 12 months ago, when maybe you had the first clue that there could be a bit of a struggle for the London Broncos last year. And they went to Catalan in a friendly, which was a friendly only in name. It was a very, very feisty encounter down in Perpignan, and they went and scored a try with 2 minutes to go to win the game. So they came into the season with such high hopes, especially after last year when they went on that run. I think it was 6 wins in 8 under Tony Ray to make sure they didn't get the wooden spoon. And you felt they were going to really kick on. And maybe one of the problems was that the later results in the summer gave the impression that the squad didn't actually need too much bolstering in the winter, so there wasn't too much business done to get new people in. They brought Tommy Lee in, of course, from the Huddersfield Giants. They'd already made the decision to bring in Shane Grady, I think, from second grade rugby in Australia. But of course, as you say, Widnes have improved immensely in their playing staff over the course of the winter. They brought in Kevin Brown from the Giants. They brought in Gareth Hock, controversially, from Wigan. You look at Wakefield, who finished in the top 8 last campaign with Richard Agar, and they themselves have made a couple of acquisitions which have bolstered their side. Super League just doesn't stand still.
No.
And Tony Ray was insistent after the match, and one of the things that struck me actually immediately after the game was I think that Tony Ray looked to be in utter shock about the outcome on Sunday afternoon. He was saying he looked at the team at half time and he wasn't even thinking about the result, even though it was only 6 points to 0 at half time, and we all thought that, having played not so well in the first half, and Wakefield, to be fair, had given up a number of chances to make it a much more convincing scoreline by the half-time interval, that you thought that actually they got away with it. They really had got away with one there, and that they would come out in the second half, get some go forward, and eventually go on to win the game. But he was looking at the players, and they were hoping, rather than knowing, that there was going to be a resolution to those problems. It was a pretty surreal interview in that respect, in that Tony Ray was giving the impression that he too had seen that there was something in the players on Sunday afternoon that suggested that whatever was going to happen, they weren't going to retrieve the situation. And of course what really happened in the second half was that Wakefield were much more clinical in the red zone. As soon as they got into the 20, they converted those chances into points. Their handling was much better. They didn't do anything spectacular. They played some good footy, and they got their just rewards. And I suppose the only problem that you would say in making this so bad for the London Broncos is that Wakefield fans listening to this would think, well, actually, we played really well, and they did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what was it like there on Sundays? A few messages on Twitter. Chris saying, flat and totally lacking in ideas for the whole 80 minutes. Funeral atmosphere, never looked like scoring. Richard saying all the optimism before the start of the season has gone. James saying, if you're losing at home to Winners and Wakey, how are you meant to beat the good teams? And Up the Dale saying, shambolic performance, worst ever, ground like a morgue. Hate to kill it, but licensing is killing London. Was it that bad? I mean, was it a not a great atmosphere?
It wasn't a good atmosphere in the second half. It certainly didn't lack the passion. I would certainly say that. I mean, you've still got a hardcore of London Rugby League supporters who make a real noise every time they go into the stoop. But I think they, like everyone else, was a bit shell-shocked, to be honest, on Sunday. I think they expected at the start of the season 2 home wins and a good performance up at John Smith Stadium, and that would have got the season off on the right foot as far as they were concerned, because, as you say, Wigan to come this weekend, and then you've got the trip to Salford the week after that, and that's now becoming a match which is taking on a huge significance for the London Broncos if they don't get anything from the DW Stadium in a week's time, because in a couple of weeks they're going to the only side that's beneath them in the Super League table. Yep. Last year, of course, we hung everything on a trip to Salford because we saw the opening of the season 4 very, very tough fixtures. They had St Helens, they had Warrington, they had Wigan. They had some very, very tough fixtures, and people were thinking, well, actually, they could easily go 0-4, but that would be okay because they may have played very well in those 4 games. But things would turn around when they went to Salford at the Salford City Stadium. And, of course, they got absolutely thrashed up at the Salford City Stadium last year. Yeah. We could be in a very, very similar situation this time around where they go 0-4 to Salford. But unlike last year, there's not too much encouragement in the performances to merit them thinking they can go to Salford and win. And, of course, Salford will be eagerly looking ahead to that game, thinking we can get ourselves off the mark. We can see the signs of improvement. They've had a torrid winter financially. They've got the new owner coming in now. They can see light at the end of the tunnel. And I think you compare them to Salford, and the Broncos fans are thinking, well, actually, we can't see that light at the end of the tunnel. Everybody is just hoping that David Hughes' commitment to the club remains as solid as it has been, that the players can be persuaded to, get that extra yard of pace, the extra passion into the performance. And if Tony Ray is right and the answers do lie within, then obviously that's entirely possible. You've got a playing staff there that's got grand final winners in Michael Robertson and Shane Rodney. You've got Antonio Calfuzzi, who's come from the Melbourne Storm. There's all sorts of talent in that back line. There's all sorts of talent in the pack as well. It's just something is not quite right down there at the moment in terms of getting that into performances, and hopefully Wigan can turn things around. Last year they went to the DW and produced one of their best away days of the season, albeit a defeat, but they played very, very well losing to the Wigan Warriors. Maybe having no expectation about them this weekend might just be the catalyst for them to rediscover themselves a bit.
Well, you'd hope so, wouldn't you? It's going to be difficult, though, for the Broncos this weekend away at Wigan, but best of luck to them. We'll hear more from Jamie Hill as well a bit later in the podcast. You're listening to Rugby League Down South, a podcast looking at the rugby league scene across the south of England. A few more messages that I got on Twitter during the week at Ian Ramsdale. Adrian saying, sadly, Londoners are not buying into rugby league, so where has it gone wrong? Because we've been trying since 1981. Fair comment, really, from Adrian, but it's difficult to say that people aren't buying into it. It's so tough, the rugby league scene out there, the sporting scene in particular in London, the sporting spectrum. People don't like watching mediocrity or, a non-winning team. You've got to be successful if things are going to happen, and it really is the missing part of the jigsaw. As much as, Adrian says, people have been trying since 1981. The game is in a different... it's in a different mindset now. Things are going about things a different way, and they have been for a good number of years. So in its current form, if you want to argue that, you're probably looking at like 8-9 years that it's been going along as it is, and things are working. We'll hear from one of the Broncos under-19s later that is proof that things are working, and it may not yet be translating into crowds through the gates, but what you've got to hope is if people can stick with it for long enough, these things will start to happen, but it will require even more time. And I know things have been going since 1981, but they haven't always been running the best of ways since then, Adrian. But thank you for your comments. As ever, you can send messages on Twitter at Ian Ramsdale. You can also email rldownsouth@gmail.com. If you want to send an email at any point during the week, send it to rldownsouth@gmail.com. Another message for you, one from Mick saying, it's a shame, Ramo, the start of the season that the Broncos have had. He had so much promise. That's quickly evaporated, though. The crowd is a worry too. But just to perk things up a little bit before we move on, I want to give you two couple of nice tweets. One from Rugby League Media on Twitter saying, love the podcast on Rugby League Down South. You have an Aussie fan here. I know that there's a couple of people down further south, down in the southern hemisphere that listen to the podcast, so thank you to you. And another one from Steve Mascord, well-known rugby league journalist over in England to cover the World Club Challenge. And I met him the other day at the funeral of David Oates, Five Live commentator and commentator for Premier Sports as well, in rugby league and football. I saw him there as well, and he sent a tweet on Sunday. He'd gone to the stoop to watch the game and said the Wakefield fans were chanting to the Broncos mascot, Tesco, Tesco, you're in the burgers, you're in the burgers. The Broncos mascot are horses. So yes, the Wakefield fans chanting, Tesco, Tesco, you're in our burgers, you're in our burgers. I quite like that, actually. But I said I'm always going to try and involve the fans in the podcast this year, so I thought I'd try and do a bit of a phone-in. So we'll take a couple of quick calls from a couple of Broncos fans just to prolong the chat. The first one being the first, Richard. We'll talk to another one later. He gave me his thoughts about the season so far.
When you consider, we scored 3 tries in 3 games, or 4 tries in 3 games, which is pretty bad. I mean, we had 5 times that we dropped the ball over the line against Widnes at home, which was, getting into the area is one thing. Putting it down on the ground is another thing. At least we did that against Widnes. We didn't put it down on the ground, but against Wakefield, I didn't go to Huddersfield, but against Wakefield, we didn't even get over that line. It was terrible. And I posted on Twitter, actually, about that, saying I just felt indifferent about that game. And I felt, there was no... I just felt indifferent about the scoreline, about the fact that we'd been nilled. I wasn't angry. I just felt, just like, oh, okay, right. The kind of like the passion had gone, and I felt like around the ground as well.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because obviously the crowd was down as well. I know that the atmosphere wasn't particularly enjoyable at the stoop at the weekend. It was all, again, a lot of optimism at the start of the season that has kind of gone so quickly now. It's going to be so difficult to get that back as well.
I think it's evaporated, hasn't it? It's bearing in mind that this is the team that we've upped the salary cap to get hold of. I know there's people like Club and Sardenson missing, and Caro's gone to KR. But I don't know. It doesn't seem. Their heads seem to go down really easily.
I was going to say, what do you make of the squad that they've assembled at the moment? Do you think it is, a top salary cap squad that should be challenging?
I think, let's be honest, with Broncos are never going to challenge, are they? But we should be looking at a playoff. We should be looking at a playoff place. What I've noticed, and I said this to my mate Guy, who I go down to the stoop with, was that when visiting teams come to us, they seem to be bigger. And it's just, it might be...
What, physically bigger?
Physically bigger. They just seem to have bigger players all over the pitch. I don't know, and we've not exactly got any small lads, but, we've kind of got one Kafusi. They seem to have 2 or 3. They just seem, the teams just seem to be better organised, bigger, and kind of just more disciplined. Wakefield, Wakefield are not going to be challenging this year, are they, to be honest?
Well, that's the key thing, isn't it?
The two teams that we've played so far at home are not... They're not. They're our peer group, and we were pretty. There was no real. We didn't give them a game. So, to be fair, against Widnes, it was better. If we'd have, I say we could have had 5 tries in that game.
Yeah,
we crossed the line 5 times. But at Wakefield, against Wakey, it just seemed. I don't know. As I say, that optimism was just gone. It seemed to have gone from the team and from the players.
Well, I won't ask you.
I find it really surprising.
Well, I won't ask you then for your prediction as to sort of like what will happen for the rest of the season. But from what you've seen, I mean, do you think the squad are underperforming? Do you think that this season there is better to come from them because they are better than that?
They've got to be. They've got to be. I mean, it's not as if we've had a hole ripped out of us through losing players during the off season. We've got, there's a nucleus of a good team there. They don't seem to be a team. That's what I'm seeing at the moment. They just don't seem to be on each other's wavelengths. And little things, I think, getting down to the technical part of the game. You watched that game on when was it? It was Bradford against Cass at the weekend. You saw Bradford kicking. Every kick was like, well, we're not giving it back to them. We're putting it up, and we're turning this kick into a 50-50. Our kicks just seem to. Well, that's the end of a set. It's kicked, and it's picked up straight away. We're not challenging on kicks. We didn't turn Wakefield around once in their in-goal area. So it just seemed, and also on the first carry, it seems to go to Dixon all the time. Now, he's going to do a Martin Afire this season. That's my prediction. He's going to do a full length of the pitch run. And every time I get it, I'm like, this is it. But then he's got 310-kilo lads on top of him. Yeah. So, as a first guy, yeah, he's great. And if he can get around them, fantastic. But, what I've seen so far, he's first receiver, and he's not making any yards.
Well, a hint there possibly of a little bit of optimism from Richard talking to me earlier on the Rugby League Down South podcast. I said I want to include as many fans as I can on the podcast this year, so if you want to be a part of it, the easiest way is to email rldownsouth@gmail.com. Also chatted with Mike about his feelings, how it's going so far.
Well, everyone, I was optimistic at first, with the pre-season we had especially in the squad, and Tony Ray being back, but the start has been nothing but disappointing. Getting nilled at home, I think, topped it off, and lost any optimism. I think that's coming into it. But I don't understand why it's happening either, and it doesn't look to get any better this weekend with Wigan. It's just disappointing to me.
Did you think it was going to be better? I mean, the end of the season sort of gave a lot of people hope last year. It doesn't seem like it's carried over.
No, it doesn't. We seem to have gone back to being a flat team. On Sunday, we didn't show anything in attack. We were back to flat lines, just throwing it out once, and couldn't seem to do anything with the ball. We were defending most of the time, and giving away a lot of silly penalties doesn't help us. And I don't know why that's all come back into our game. Like you say, at the end of last season, we looked like a good team again. And in the last 5 games, or 5 games that we won at the end, we looked like a team that could be a Super League team again, but it's gone again.
How do you feel in terms of, the crowds are down as well? I mean, I guess it's inevitable that stuff like this happens.
Yeah, well, the crowds have been declining for the last few years while we've not been a very good team. And the only way to get them back, I think, is to have a winning team. And my friends, a lot of them are kind of with me, they look out for our results, and they all see that we're losing. So if anyone has kept an eye on the Broncos while their scores are going down, they're not going to be enticed back by watching the losing results coming back, are they?
And what do you think? What's the biggest disappointment of everything for you? The fact that they're not winning, the fact that crowds are down, the fact that they don't look like a team that are challenging at the moment. I mean, what's the thing that you think at the moment is the most disappointing?
For me personally, it's not winning. I wouldn't care how many people there. If we were winning, that would take care of itself then. I'm glad that they made the change they did with the coach. But I think there's a lot of things that aren't. We've got a lot of uncertainties about the club again. Still about where we're playing next season as well. That, to me, is quite a big issue, which I think we need to hear a bit more about. On the pitch, it's just why we're not winning. Everyone wants to see a winning team. That's why we go, isn't it?
Will you follow them wherever they go next year, or will it depend on where they end up?
It depends on where they end up for me. If they go to Gillingham, I won't be going down there. I think I'd rather go and watch the Scholars next year, because it sounds like they're going to have quite a good year in the Championship one this year. But if they stay in Central London, or reasonably in Central London, or preferably at the Street, but I think the Street is a great ground.
And what about the on another topic, the shoulder charge? The RFL have outlawed it today. It seemed like it was coming in over the last couple of days. Will you miss it?
Yeah, I think it was a good part of the game, and it was always something that you could joke about with rugby union fans and say, well, we've got this in our game, you're a bit too soft for that. Obviously, we can't say that anymore. No one wants anything to be dangerous, but most of the time, from what I've seen, it just makes for a good, entertaining hit, and everyone loves it.
You'd rather it stay?
I would rather it stay, yeah. It's just part of rugby league.
we'll hear from the BBC commentator Ray French about his thoughts on the shoulder charge very soon. But that was Mike talking to us as one of the fans' views here on the podcast. And why not, let's put another Richard in, shall we, to finish our little section with the fans. We've been chatting about wider issues in the Rugby League and Rugby League Down South / London week, but also his views on the Broncos.
It's been a disappointing start, I think, to be fair. Pre-season results look good, and I guess you don't want to read too much into them, and so it's proved as, the first 3 games have been pretty dire, actually, and really disappointing. And I think probably the biggest disappointment was, certainly on Sunday in the game against Wakefield, was the body language of the players was awful, I thought, on the field, not to put too fine a point on it. They looked a beaten side from the moment Wakefield scored, which was after about 2 minutes. I never got the feeling they ever thought they could get back into that game, which is probably the most disappointing part of the whole thing, and that sort of disseminates out to the fans, doesn't it, in the stands, and then it's never a good place to be. All in all, not a good start.
And we mentioned with a few of the callers about sort of the game and the atmosphere and sort of how the day was itself. I mean, you're a fan of the Broncos, and I guess the uncertainty over what's happening next year as well in terms of a location doesn't help. If it was just the fact that they were losing, people can, I dare say, bear it. But I think there's just so much uncertainty around it; it just all adds in together.
Yeah, I think you're right, absolutely. I think Broncos have always struggled to put roots down anyway, wherever they've been and how long they're going. So when they moved back to the Stoop a few years ago as Quins RL, I think many people thought, right, this will be it, and this will be the start of something again. But it hasn't turned out like that, and suddenly, as of, back in a few weeks ago, we learn we're off again. And not just that, we still don't know where that is, so we don't want to speculate too much, but the G word seems to be, Gillingham seems to be put around quite a lot.
Well, I think that's there because basically, it was, they were very close to agreeing a move to Gillingham, and I'm pretty sure that their offer is still on the table. But I do believe that they are looking at other options, and I know that I think it's the option that people don't want, so it's why it springs to mind so often. But they are considering other options. I know that, to be fair, and I think that maybe the fans gave them a view of what would happen if they moved away and out of London, and I think it maybe thought, well, maybe we don't want to do this. I'm not saying they won't do that in the future. They may well, but I know that they are looking and seriously looking at other venues as well.
Good. Well, I'm sure you know a bit more than me, but if that's true, then that's positive. But as you say, it may still end up being Gillingham, but it may be somewhere else as well. So it's just hard when I guess we don't really know the reason why they're moving again. I've heard it said that the rent is too much from Quins, and that may well be the case, and it probably suited them quite nicely. I think when Broncos first went back there, Quins were in the Rugby Championship in the second tier, so it probably suited them quite nicely to have us there, but now they're obviously moved on, they're Premiership champions, and I wonder if we just get under their feet a bit. So,
I think there's an aspect to, I mean, what they said, that the financial model is changing, so I think that, they're putting the rent up, basically, is what I read in it. And I think that there are cheaper options elsewhere, and that is the major reason, I think. And it's not the fact that they do want to try new markets. There is an element of going, looking, and trying to involve new people. But I think, if you're given two options and one costs you a significant amount less as an owner that's losing, over $1 million, $2 million a year, you might take a slightly lesser blow for the same outcome.
It is the age of austerity, so I guess that affects us all, doesn't it?
But they can use it as an opportunity to go and try new markets, as they're saying. So you never know quite what may happen in the future along those lines. As a fan, how do you feel about the banning of the shoulder charge? The RFL have said that they've jumped in line with first the NRL and then the Rugby League International Federation from early this week, and now the shoulder charge is no longer.
Yeah, I guess odd timing, really. I would have thought, they're obviously falling in line with the NRL, but that decision was made some weeks ago, if not a bit longer. So
it was December.
Ban it 3 weeks into the season, smacks a little bit of panic. I know there's been a couple of high-profile incidents which have probably forced their hand a bit.
I think it's just that they said they were waiting for the Rugby League International Federation to make a call, and they've jumped in line and said, we want to have the rules consistently throughout the divisions, which is kind of the sensible thing.
Yeah, I think it probably is the most sensible decision, to be honest.
Will you miss
guess
it?
At the end of the day, as they're custodians of the game, they've got to look after player safety, so if they see that as an issue, then that's the way they've got to go. Will
you miss the shoulder charge?
Well, I think it's got a place in the game, but certainly when high-profile things happen, like have happened soon, it sort of focuses everyone's mind onto that. So, no, I think it's probably the right decision to make. I think it's right.
So that's it for our Broncos section for this week, although we'll hear from an under-19s player, the London Broncos, about them having trained with Melbourne, who go against Leeds Rhinos, don't they, in the World Club Challenge this week. So I will hear from Paddy Mooney a little bit later on. But now to concentrate on a couple of the other sides involved in rugby league action across the south of England. In particular, we'll hear from Guildford, we'll hear from HEMEL Stags coach Troy Perkins. And right now, let's talk a bit about Oxford, but not particularly ahead of their season, but about the fact that they'll be playing at Iffley Road, a very iconic ground. It's where Roger Bannister ran the first sub 4 minute mile, steeped in sporting history as well. And one of the men who remembers, I won't say a lot of that history, some of that history, is the BBC commentator in Ray French. Of course, dual code international that he is in rugby league and rugby union. I spoke to him a little earlier to ask him about various things, and we do get onto the subject of the shoulder charge. But first of all, these memories of Iffley Road.
I've great memories of going watching down Iffley Road, certainly with schoolboy rugby. If many people will remember the Oxford Sevens that used to be held down there, one of the major rugby union seven-a-sides tournaments in the country. And it was a great competition between the northern schools and the big southern schools when you got down there. And I used to take a school here in St Helens called Cowley School down there. With the seven-a-sides, and we had some terrific success. It was a great success playing against the leading schools down there. Tremendous competition. It wasn't just the playing; it was all weekend. We used to stay in one of the colleges down there, and it was the whole atmosphere that you brought young lads down to a place which was iconic for rugby. We always used to have a look at the track where Roger Bannister broke the 4 minute mile, and a lot of my lads they grow up playing. People like John Horton, who later played for England, rugby union, Mick Burke, who played rugby league for Great Britain, and Widnes, Dave Gullick, these sort of guys. But I really enjoyed it. And as a pitch, a magnificent pitch, huge pitch, wide pitch, flat pitch with that clubhouse in the corner. So atmospheric.
And how good do you think it is then that the Oxford Rugby League have managed to secure playing on that ground? Because I believe it was sort of there or nowhere in terms of their business plan, but they managed to persuade them to get a rugby league side playing semi-professionally on there this year.
Well, I think two things. First of all, it shows that bigotry, which was so prevalent years ago, and not too many years ago either, Ian, has gone. That it's no longer there now. That both codes can exist side by side with each other, and that's been proved all over the rest of the country. In every county in England now, there is rugby league being played at amateur or professional level. Not just rugby league, but leagues taking place. And for Oxford to go along and accommodate rugby league, I think that's a massive step. It's a massive move forward. It is for rugby league because, as I said, Oxford and Oxford University itself are iconic in terms of what they have done and what contribution they've made to rugby union. And they are making what will truly be a lasting contribution now to rugby league. You see, in one sense, you cannot just take it. Rugby league has actually been going down the wrong path in certain years. You can't just plant professionalism in an area. You can't just sell we'll have a Super League club in or Bognor Regis or something like that. It just does not work You need the growth. You need the population around. You need the support to gel and to move. It takes 30, 40, 50 years to move from an Oxford to a Super League club, even if you don't need to move to it. You see, if you look at Rugby Union, they just have one fully professional league. They then have one part-time league, the Championship. Now, the rest are all amateur clubs. All right, they pay a few bob here, they pay a few bob there.
Yeah.
But they're essentially amateur clubs watched by what? Up to 1,000 people. That's all. But it gives it that national identity, again, which Rugby League may not have.
It seems like a thing that quite a lot of clubs, I mean, I've obviously talked with clubs in London and around the London area that have gone to places where they have an established rugby union side, and it seems like the common sense thing to do, to tell them, if you want to play during the summer, let's play rugby league. It gives them something to do to keep their fitness, and you never know, you might get people preferring the game, wanting to play rugby league, and it's a way of embedding, I guess, a side like you say, and growing it in an evolutionary way rather than just plonking it down.
Well, I think you have to grow in an evolutionary way, and I think there's only to a certain height and a certain level and grow. I think, as I say, I think this idea of implanting Super League clubs here, there and everywhere, and even implanting a fully professional rugby union club here, there and everywhere, you can't do it. It has to grow by natural means. And I do think that here at Oxford, excuse me, there is a terrific chance to do something like that, because Oxford has a prestige around it. I mean, if you look in another area, you've got HEMEL Stags who are coming into the Championship alongside Oxford. Now, they've come through another pathway, haven't they? They've come through the amateur code of rugby league. They were a very tiny little amateur rugby league club when I first went down there. I'm going back 30 years when it was just virtually a field.
Absolutely.
And I first visited it. But look at it today. It's developed, it's grown, and it's come through another path. The Oxford identity can also come through another path.
And I guess, from what you're saying, you sound pretty supportive of how the championships will look in 2013. Are you supportive of the expansion that they've done and sort of that, again, not trying to put these teams in Super League, but putting them in Championship 1 and building from the bottom up?
Oh, put them in Championship 1 and just let them be a presence. That's all you need as a presence. I mean, who would have thought, certainly I wouldn't, Ian, 30 years ago, that there would be a league kicking off this season involving teams from Gateshead, from London Scholars, from Gloucester, from Oxford, from HEMEL Stags, from South Wales, from North Wales, as teams like Oldham and Rochdale.
It's a big year, isn't it?
It's a terrific year. It's a great, great new start for the game.
And while you're on, Ray, I thought I'd get your thoughts on the shoulder charge as well. Where do you stand? Are you a fan of it? Would you miss it?
No, I wouldn't. In fact, I've just written an article today, Ian, regarding the shoulder charge, and I've compared it. Many, many years ago in my day, there was a tackle called the Cumberland Throw, which was done normally by a tiny man on a big man. When you went to hand off somebody, he would put his foot out, grab hold of your arm, and throw you over his foot. Okay. Now, very often, the shoulder was wrenched out, or you fell on your shoulder and you broke it.
Right.
Now, it looked spectacular. Fans liked it because it was a little man toppling the big man, but it was dangerous. And it was nasty. And I do think that the shoulder charge is the same. I've no truck for it, never have. And I'm pleased to see that the International Board are banning it. It can be very dangerous. No question. It might look spectacular, and the fans who like the physicality, you might hear those oohs and ahs and, oh, he's done him, he's got him. But that fan wants to be on the end of a shoulder charge, and I can tell you, they can be very, very nasty.
Such a great bloke, such a nice bloke, such a knowledgeable bloke as well. Ray French, the BBC commentator, with his views there on the shoulder charge, but also his memories of Oxford's venue where they're playing in Championship 1 this year at Iffley Road. If you can get to a game there this year, I'm sure you'll just feel the history of the place when you're there, hoping to do that at some point this year when their season gets underway. They play HEMEL Stags in a pre-season friendly this weekend. And in fact, we'll hear from the HEMEL Stags now, because they played at Gateshead Thunder in a game, another pre-season warm-up friendly, as the sides prepare for a new look Northern Rail Cup campaign. In fact, we should get the coach's view on the new style of the Northern Rail Cup and what they make of it over the next few weeks. But this is their head coach, Troy Perkins, on the 20-point defeat to Gateshead.
Yeah, I think it was a sort of decent result for us. I would have been disappointed if we got beat by many more points than that, and I wouldn't have. It might sound a bit funny, but I would like to win the game, because I think it could have put our players into a bit of a false sense of security, thinking that they were probably going a bit better than they were. So I think a 20-point margin is about right. I mean, I thought we were probably the better team in the second half, but we just couldn't convert some of our try-scoring opportunities, where the couple of times they were in our third of the field, they scored points just from a couple of bad reads in defence. So I think there wasn't a lot between the two teams, and I'd be pretty disappointed if we didn't sort of beat them when they come down in about 6 weeks' time. So overall, it was a good performance. The players realise what level they need to be at, for this season, and it was a real eye opener to some people. Some of the players that have made the step up said last year there were times, playing amateur rugby, you could be a bit lazy or get away with a few things where Gateshead exploited any weaknesses we had, or any lapses in concentration were punished, and that's something that we need to address, for this weekend and through the season.
I guess some people may have looked at it, Troy, and sort of the cynical head goes, okay, well, Gateshead have been bottom of Championship 1. They've lost to Gateshead. They're going to finish below Gateshead in the league. That's sort of not how you've seen it. This was all part of your plan.
Yeah. As I said, I wasn't concerned about losing the game. Gateshead have recruited reasonably well. They've got a couple of dual registered players from Hull KR that full-time environment up there, and they went pretty good for them. And also they've brought in a couple of players. So I mean, I wasn't too concerned about the score. I know that Gateshead were one of the bottom teams last year, but they were in a lot harder competition. There was Pilkingtons, Whitehavens, Doncasters, teams like that are now out of that league. So I mean, I think from Gateshead point of view, they'd be looking for a top 6 finish this year. So I wouldn't call them one of the bottom teams. But I know that we've got a lot of improvement in us. I mean, there was only 5 players in last weekend's squad that played in last year's grand final. So we're a really new team, and we've still got a lot of work to do and a lot of cohesion to get right. But I thought it was a reasonably promising start for us, and now we've got Oxford this weekend, and we've still got the Northern Rail Cup, even though it's obviously pretty serious for us. But we get to look at some players and maybe try a few things out with when you haven't got 3 points at stake, which we will once the Championship 1 season starts.
And how do you approach a game with Oxford this weekend? Because I know that, as coaches you talk to each other, and so you don't want it to be a mismatch. How are the two coaches going into it? Are you hoping to play your sort of strongest 13? This is your sort of last run out before the season starts?
Yeah, it's going to be. Both coaches are going to look at it differently. I'm looking at putting out a pretty strong team. I was looking at maybe resting a couple of players for just leading up to the first Northern Rail Cup game, but I think after last weekend that they can all do with another hit out before we play Gloucester. So we'll be putting out a pretty strong team. Saying that, I've spoken to Tony, and Tony's looking at it a different way, because he's not in the Northern Rail Cup. He still has a lot of players that he needs to have a look at. He knows what he's going to get from his Oldham and Northern recruits, but he doesn't know that much about his recruits from down south. So he's going to be using the majority of them. I think he said he's got 3 northern-based players playing. That's it. So he's looking at it from a different point of view than what I am. I'm looking at putting in a good performance with my key players leading up to the Gloucester game, where he's looking at it as just seeing his fringe players that he doesn't know a lot about at the moment, and see how they go against another Championship 1 club.
And I know, as a head coach, you don't generally get too much time off, but you've had a couple of busy days, and you've been down to Bristol to sort of have a look at a cottage set up to sort of try and do a similar thing up in Northampton. Is that right?
Yeah, we're just in the initial stages. It's really, really early stages, but we just had a look down in Bristol, and they've got a rugby league academy down there, and it's working quite well for them. So we know that we can't just rely on local players or players, within the area of HEMEL to produce quality players, and we've got to cast our net a bit further afield. So yeah, there's a sports college up in Northampton, and we're gonna have a chat to them and see if they might be interested in running a rugby league academy up there too. So I mean, it's only 45-50 minutes from the college to HEMEL's ground, so it's not a massive distance. And having spoke to the guys down at the academy in Bristol yesterday, they got kids commuting from Wales, which is over an hour. So it's very doable. So if those players want to be in a really good environment and have training going alongside their studies, that'll be, we'll hopefully get some players that down the track could be first-team players for HEMEL Hempstead.
HEMEL Stags coach Troy Perkins, and that's a quick look at Championship 1 clubs for this week's Rugby League Down South podcast. Elsewhere, just chatting with Troy as well, he's mentioning that they're probably going to have a couple of Broncos players pretty much on sort of dual reg season-long loan for the whole season. Still sort of figuring out exactly who that might be, but Mikey Bichet was mentioned as possibly being available more often for HEMEL this season, and also he's planning some weekly games for his second side as well, so they don't feel as left out, which I think is a great ploy really. And if you can get a seconds team playing week in week out with good opposition as well, will only be good for the development of the HEMEL Stags. And also we heard from Ray French before, talking about a column that he's written about the shoulder charge. It's for the League Weekly. Next week, I think, so you'll be able to read his thoughts on the shoulder charge in particular in pretty more detail than we got into in League Weekly next week. Right now, though, let's go a little bit deeper in the rugby league spectrum and hear from one of the clubs preparing for their game or their season in the amateur game. And we'll go to the Guildford Guide. Their secretary is a guy called Richard Ingle. Caught up with him earlier on about just generally about how the pre-season was going in terms of, at that level, how does the pre-season go? And in fact, they're lining up for their AGM next week. And I wanted this to be start of a new feature, really. I do profiles of any club that plays rugby league in the south of England. If you are one of them, if you play for one of those, or you know of one and you want to get them mentioned, we'll do a little profile about many clubs. In fact, I put that on Twitter earlier on this evening at time of recording, and already I've got 3 clubs saying that they'd like to come on the programme: Staines, Titans, the MK Wolves, and also the Medway Dragons. So we'll do those 3 club profiles over the next couple of weeks. So if you have a club that you want to get featured on the programme, get him on, we'll have a good chat. We had a good chat as well with Rich Ingle of Guildford Giants.
Rich, well, let's start with your partnership with, is it Woking College? Is that it? Tell us a bit about that.
Yes, so last year, London Broncos came and were getting involved in the local Guildford area, trying to get schools and colleges playing, and one of the colleges they went to was Woking College, and the teacher there, John Paul, was really interested in extending the sport program they had, which involved rugby union and play sevens and local tournaments, and getting rugby league as part of that as well. Right. So during the season they had some training sessions with Adam Carl from the London Broncos. Yep. Entered a few local schools or local colleges tournaments, and really got behind it. A couple of their lads came and played for us during the season, and we ended up using Woking College as a home for 3 of our league fixtures last year. So it was a strong start, and that's continued. They've been really keen to get the game going and continue with it, and get into other local schools and have a local league. So it just made sense to have this partnership, get them trained up so they could deliver the sessions, hopefully get more coaches, players, volunteers involved in the sport.
Well, that's it. I mean, you see it at many levels, but just looking at places like Oxford, entering Championship 1 now, and it's vital for them that they've established links with the local universities and and the local clubs around the area. For one, it shows that it's going to help the club develop and it's going to open up more avenues for you. But I think it also shows how more embedded you become within the area as well.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely vital for the sport to grow in all areas, really. I know we've seen as a club, in our first few years, we didn't get involved in the schools or colleges, primarily not having the volunteers to do so, and trying to pull together people who've never experienced the sport is quite difficult. To make it grow and build those roots, you need to get into the schools early, get teachers qualified in coaching, get it onto the curriculum. If there's local competitions they can enter, it all sort of grows from there. Kids have been through school, will have played the sport, and when they grow up, either be willing to get involved and play it, maybe help out, maybe just watch it or go to a game. Either way, it helps the sport grow and just builds that local knowledge. And if the game is going to expand nationally in the future, that's the way we need to take it.
How are preparations going for your 2013 season? I got an email, I think, today saying that it's your AGM early next week, which means that things will be in place for the season. And I guess from my point of view, I mean, sometimes you don't realise quite how much of a structure and an organisation there is with these clubs. Sometimes you think they're just people, rocking up, throwing a ball around and having a few games here and there. But, these clubs that are putting down roots, you've got a committee, you've got everything. It's like, a well-run society.
Yeah, I guess it takes the time to get there as well. Going from a club with a more social aspect to make it have a number of teams and become self-sustaining, it gets to the point where it's too big for a few people to look after. So building a proper structure, getting people involved with defined roles and having a solid committee who are willing to put in the time and effort to put that together has been a big thing for the club to lay its foundations properly. We've been striving hard this year to be further advanced in where we were compared to last year. We've got our AGM coming up. We've got all our committee positions filled with people either standing or restanding. We're moving into a new home location, which we believe will be somewhere we can stay for the next few years.
And where's that?
That's at Earnfield School. I think it's Guildford County School. They're playing fields on the edge of Guildford Town Centre. So somewhere we didn't know about until the start of this year. And they've got rugby pitches which they're willing to keep up over the summer. Hopefully, PE teachers quite keen, so we might be able to get rugby league into the school as well. If we can get one of our coaches to go in and deliver some sessions. They've got a little clubhouse there, called pitch, but we can have sole use of it on match day. So there's the options of getting additional income in through tuck shop, drink sales, and so on. So for the club, it's a great place to stay, and we hope it works out well this year. And a sort of nomadic past of the Guildford Giants will end now.
And I know that I saw on your AGM list one of your agenda items is media coverage. How do you find media coverage towards a rugby league side? An amateur rugby league side in Guildford?
I guess it's surprisingly good. The local papers are very welcoming of sporting news to come in.
Which is good.
In the summer months, it's mainly cricket that happens, but they're always willing to put our match reports and our news in there. I think generally, given the size of the sport in the local area, actually, media, not just local, but yourself, BBC London, before getting that exposure was great for the club, and we have had a few people being interested from Dean to Heard and coming along to play.
That's great.
So it has helped massively, and we hope it will continue, and we'll continue to strive to get more recognised, continue to send out our press releases as we have, and hopefully if it picks up one new person during the year, then it's all worth it.
Well, one more double-pronged question before I let you go and dial 1471, see which call you missed. Are you still growing as a club? Are you getting more members? And two, do you expect to still continue to grow in a year where the community coaches aren't necessarily going to be as well flourished around the area and able to help you in development? You mentioned Adam Kyle earlier on, but those people aren't necessarily going to be around this year. So can you continue to grow if you are indeed growing?
Yes, I believe we can. We grew last year. Obviously, we added our women's team, which helped our numbers.
Who were recently on Sky Sports, weren't they, on Saturday morning? So that was good to see.
They were indeed, yeah. It was part of the Get Involved series, which I think you can still watch online. That's a little bit in there with Alton Raiders as well, which is great for the club. But overall, in terms of membership, we increased last year, I think, about 20% new members. We're not increasing the number of teams this year, consolidating with what we've got.
Very sensible.
May try and run a few friendlies if we end up getting more parents and more kids in, but we'll see how that goes. I think for us, not having the development staff there isn't going to be a big difference, because although they helped get the Woking College set up off the ground, they were only around for a couple of months, perhaps didn't get as embedded in the schools as they could have done if they'd stayed longer. Unfortunately, it was just the timing of how things worked out. So I think the club will remain independent. We've got that link into the schools, and hopefully now there are these options opening up. Our memberships will continue to grow anyway, regardless of what's happening. And all that's nice, getting help in from development officers, but really it should be treated as an added bonus. And as a club and a committee, we're always aiming to increase the number of members, regardless of what's happening in the outside world. The club, we're aiming to have the club stand on its own 2 feet, and I believe that's how we should run it in future.
So that's the Guildford Giants and their club secretary, Richard Ingle, who's back up for re-election at their AGM next week. So best of luck to everyone who's standing for the committee at the Guildford Giants for 2013. But like I say, if you want to have your club, or you know of a club in the south that play at rugby league and we can get them on the programme, do get in touch. The email address, rldownsouth@gmail.com. rldownsouth@gmail.com. Also, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at Ian Ramsdale. And finally, just to finish, of course, it's the World Club Challenge, sort of a week Friday at time of recording. And the Melbourne Storm are already here, acclimatising. And the Broncos under-19s had a training session with them on Friday of last week. What an honour it must have been for them to train with players of such high calibre. So I thought I couldn't get away without getting one of them on the programme this week. So I caught up with one of the Broncos under-19s. In fact, not just one of them. He was the captain, a guy called Paddy Mooney, one of their forwards, about the day that they trained with a club that potentially could be, in the World Club Challenge, the best club in the world.
Yeah, I know. I think it probably was the best team on the planet. They were, I don't know, it's crazy. Just I suppose the two halfbacks they have, the fullback and the hooker, it's just crazily good.
What was it like? Because obviously they'd come over, they trying to get acclimatised, not only to the weather, no doubt, but also sort of being over here. What was it like to be training with them?
To be honest, I was a bit starstruck to start off with, just literally seeing them on the same pitch. But then, just as I suppose as you got into the swing of things, they were a bit like any other team, just much bigger, faster, stronger, and better, really.
Does it make you feel any differently or think any differently about them? Because I guess before, I don't know whether these people on the TV that sort of just existed but in on almost another world, now you've actually met them.
I suppose it kind of makes them more, I don't know, not so superhero-like, being them, seeing them and playing against them and with them. When you see them on the big TV in front of 90,000 people in Sydney and stuff, they kind of look like something ridiculous, but I suppose when you play with them against them, they're not too far a reach from you.
And 3 quick-fire questions for you. Are you watching the World Club Challenge on Friday?
Yeah, definitely.
Who are you watching it with?
Probably with Dad and brother.
And how often do you think you'll be sat there going, I tackled him, he tackled me, I ran past him, I jumped over him?
Probably every play of the game.
Was there a bit of the training session that you remember in particular? I mean, what's your position?
I'm prop.
Okay, so any particular tackle you remember, any particular challenge, any particular person you smashed through? I didn't smash through anyone, that's for sure. I remember getting a good shoulder on one of their props. I can't remember which one it was. I think he hit a line, and me and I think Urjon whacked him first, but yeah, got a solid contact on him. And so, obviously, they were playing you because no fixture could be sort of agreed for the first team. So, I guess you've done all right there, haven't you? You know, the under-19s playing against this side. I mean, you've come out pretty well.
Yeah, no, I mean, it wasn't full on, but yeah, no, it was definitely something special, and I don't think we looked too bad out there.
And what was your route into playing rugby league as well? Which amateur club did you start with?
I started with West London Sharks, which is now known as Staines Titans.
Yeah.
So I literally I used to play cricket in the summer, but couldn't bat a bowl, so I thought I'd play rugby league instead. Play rugby all year, and then I suppose just went through Origin when I was younger, and then got into Broncos through that, really.
I guess it's heartening for some people to listen to a story like yours as well, to show that the structures do work, because, you know, obviously it's a developing sport, and people keep saying, you know, that the talent is coming through, but having, you know, been in other sports, picked up rugby league, played it, and then come through, like you say, played the Origin games, North London against South London, now come through and be on a Broncos scholarship programme. I mean, it does show, doesn't it, that the talent's there, and if it's found, you can bring it through.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think in years to come, if it's going as it is now, that London should without doubt be the biggest and best team in Super League, just purely because of the pool of players in London, just the amount of sports people there are in London that could be potentially playing rugby league.
And I think there's one thing about London and Londoners as well, that they're passionate about their city. You know, they really believe in it, and there must be a real good ethos, even in the younger age groups at Broncos. That you're representing London, isn't it? It's a big thing.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's always, whenever you play against a northern team, which is every week, you always kind of got a point to prove. You always got kind of a chip on your shoulder almost.
And what about your season? Has it started now? Does it run alongside? Because it's 19s now, isn't it? The second, they're like the reserves to the first team. So have you already started your season now? We've had 3 games so far. How's it gone?
Well, we haven't won one yet. But personally, I think we should have won all 3, but we've lost. I mean, we had a win this first game, lost in the last minute against Huddersfield 2 weeks ago. We lost in the last play of the game, and again last week we lost in the last play of the game again. So it's been pretty ridiculous as far as that's gone, but it's something to build on. We've got Wigan this week, so that should be a good game.
Absolutely, yeah. Tough one as well, because they've got a big, strong academy set up as well, haven't they? So yeah, I'm sure it'll be a tough one. And in terms of the first team, of course, they're not having a great season so far. How does that, or does it affect or impact on you? I mean, do you look at them? Do you look at the results? Do you wonder sort of why they're winning, why they're losing? I mean, do you manage to watch many of their games and stuff like that, or are you pretty much kept separately and you're your own team?
I think as Australian sides go to it, we are our separate team, and in terms of playing, we are completely separate this year. It's not like how the 20s and 18 system work, how you would have a lot of first teamers coming back.
Yeah.
But obviously, everyone in the team really wills on the first team to win. I mean, at the end of the day, they're the more important side, and it's their kind of how they do is how it reflects on us as a club.
So it just goes to show, doesn't you, that the structures can work and the things are in place. We mentioned Adrian's tweet earlier on in the programme, but Paddy, living proof really that structures are there for these players to come through, and if he goes through to make first team performances, it shows that we're producing the calibre of players as well that many people want to see us produce, and it's just a matter now of the South making sure that they can get the people to have bums on seats, and we'll see more people watching professional rugby league this season with the introduction of HEMEL Stags and Gloucestershire and Oxford, so there will be more people within the southern regions watching rugby league. And to be fair, when you look at it that way, you could argue that support for rugby league in the South is growing in that respect. But worth touching on as well, just before we go, that the Melbourne Storm being over there, of course, you remember the Manly game from a couple of years ago now. It was probably about 2008 to Mike, around 2009 possibly. Manly came over, played a friendly at the Stoop against Harlequins Rugby League, as they were then, against London Broncos now. And it was probably one of the biggest attended games that I've possibly been to down at the Stoop. There may only be a couple more that have outsold that one when I've been there. And also, the biggest game in recent history at the Twickenham Stoop was an international game between Australia and New Zealand that got more people on a Friday night there than an England against Wales game at the Keep Moat Stadium the following night. So support for the game is strong in London in certain areas, and what a game against Melbourne Storm potentially have been a nice headline grabber. A bit of publicity, and also a good hit out as well for the London Broncos, and a nice warm-up game for Melbourne as well, maybe more than a training game against the under-19s, who knows, but it didn't happen. But before, when I talked to Jamie Hill, who was reporting on the game for BBC London at the Stoop, I asked him about sort of what had happened at the end of the game, what he'd found out about why this game hadn't took place.
It would have been this last weekend, the weekend of the Wakefield game, and I guess you could say that if that was the case and they've been denied a chance to play against the NRL Champions, that might be one of the reasons why maybe the Broncos had one eye on other things apart from the Wakefield game. It doesn't appear as though actually moving the game against Wakefield was the problem. And we have to be obviously cautious because there are two sides to this story, obviously. The London Broncos, especially Tony Ray, talking to the Sydney Morning Herald, seemed to suggest that the Rugby Football League wanted some money in order for the London Broncos to fulfil the fixture against the Melbourne Storm. For their part, the RFL are insistent it wasn't so much a fee, but the fact that the Broncos, because the World Club Challenge actually falls outside the jurisdiction of the RFL and the Australian Rugby League, have to stump up some of the travel costs and agree those fees with the Leeds Rhinos, because they feel that because there's another game taking place beyond the World Club Challenge, it's unfair on the Leeds Rhinos to stump up all the travel and accommodation costs for a team when they're actually playing more than one match in the United Kingdom as a result. But clearly this would have been a massive opportunity for the London Broncos. They have, of course, played the NRL Champions down at the Stoop before, and attendances have been, not too bad. I think the last one got nearly 4,000 down there at the Stoop with the right sort of publicity. You never know what might have happened as well. It would have been the sort of thing everyone could have got behind. There were some suggestions I've seen that maybe you should put up a trophy for the game and, really make it a big occasion, market it aggressively to the Australian community that's down here in London, and who knows just how many people might have turned up at the Stoop. And I suppose the one thing I'd come back to last weekend, Ian, is it was the back of a double-header weekend down there at the Stoop in terms of rugby matches. Not the first time that's going to happen this season. The next time game is happening on the same day as a Harlequins Rugby Union match, for example, when they play Bath in the LV Cup. Then the Broncos are playing Hull KR in a televised fixture at 6:15 that evening. Last weekend, of course, Harlequins were playing Leicester in a top-of-the-table clash in the Aviva Premiership. It got 14,500. The day after, 1,800 people turn up to watch the Wakefield Trinity Wildcats, and that sort of comparison doesn't do the London Broncos any favours, of course, and there are all sorts of reasons we can go into as to why the crowd wasn't as big or why Rugby League has not quite got the foothold yet. But a game against the Melbourne Storm on a weekend when Quins are playing such a marquee match in the Aviva Premiership would have been a much better sell, of course. It might have attracted some of those Quins fans to come along to the game. It might have attracted the Australian community to come out and support London Rugby League. It might have got a few more people who are Broncos fans out of the door to watch the game. It's not inconceivable to think it would have got a big crowd and a big presence for the London Broncos. And Tony Ray's absolutely furious about it. He wants to make sure that never, ever happens again in terms of a missed opportunity for the London Broncos. And I think for the game of rugby league in general, because a game like that can only do the game good, and we've lost that chance.
So that's Jamie Hill, one of a number of contributors to this rather long episode of Rugby League Down South for this week. But thank you for all your contributions. It was worth doing the half an hour discussion on the London Broncos. And also next week we'll feature more clubs in the club profiles as well. Get to know more about the teams that are facing a season of rugby league playing outside of the heartlands, as it's known, over in this country. And if you are like Rugby League Media, who sent me a message on Twitter, at Ian Ramsdale, if you're listening outside the region, down in the southern hemisphere maybe, then do send us a message. We'll make sure we read them out where possible each week at Ian Ramsdale on Twitter or on the email rldownsouth@gmail.com. Right, that's it though for this week. We're back next week, podcast out sort of late Wednesday, early Thursday morning. Thank you very much for listening. The figures are going really, really well. I'm hopeful of expanding the podcast and making it slightly more technically advantageous or adventurous over the next few weeks. And also a couple of extra special things planned if I can get them off the ground later on in the season. So thank you for listening. It really does make all the difference the more clicks that it gets. And fingers crossed you, like me, will be back next week.